Today on Fight Capital, I'm looking into the science behind combat sports nutrition with the expert who keeps elite fighters in peak shape, Peter Miller, founder of Condition Nutrition. If you ever wondered how champions manage their weight and fuel performance, this interview is packed with insights that you're not going to want to miss. And if you're enjoying this content, always appreciate if people can give me a subscribe, a like, follow, drop a comment, tell me how I'm doing. Always appreciate everyone's feedback. Now, Peter Miller, let's get it. Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rapaport. Today I'm joined by Peter Miller. He is the founder of Condition Nutrition, a company dedicated for optimizing performance for combat sports athletes through personalized nutrition strategies. He has worked for elite fighters like Liam Harrison, Jonathan Haggerty, Jack Della Maddalena, and many other multiple world champions, helping them improve weight management and overall performance. With a focus on evidence-based methods, Peter's approach emphasizes the importance of proper nutrition for achieving peak athletic success. Thank you for joining me today, Peter. How are you and where are you joining from?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. Thanks for having me on. I am currently in Bangkok. So just got back from one championship at Denver. So got back last week, but still got a bit of jet lag, bit of a slow start, but we move forward.
Oh, yeah, well, that's quite the trip, but what an amazing event to be at. And I obviously didn't go the way that Liam wanted it to, but it was still an amazing performance and was happy to see him in there competing at least one more time. So thank you for getting him ready to do that. Just kind of stepping back a little bit, what inspired you to focus specifically on combat sports nutrition, and how did Condition Nutrition's journey begin?
My journey is a bit of a crazy one, because I left school. I didn't really concentrate in school, left school with no grades, and then I started working in a DIY store when I was like 17, 18. Then I had a bit of an epiphany about 19, 20 that I needed to try and do something with my life, and went back to the only interest I had in school was sport. So I went back to college, resat a lot of my grades, then went to university, did a sports science degree. When I first did it, realised how hard it actually was, so I had to concentrate and knuckle down, got my degree. And then I was looking into master's options, not purely for the fact that I had my heart set on a master's, the fact that I didn't really know what else to do once I finished my degree. So I did a master's in sports nutrition and physiology, and then I had the idea that I wanted to work with athletes, so set up Condition Nutrition. Generally working with everybody. It wasn't specific to combat sports. I had a couple of friends who were boxers and MMA fighters, and I did a couple of their nutrition plans, and then it kind of just went from when you're working with someone, and it went to working with more fighters, and it got to the point where like my passion grew more and more in this space, and then it just niched everything down, started working with purely fighters about 3.5 years ago now, and yeah, never look back, really.
I was so interested to talk with you just because I feel like there's so many misconceptions around weight cutting and proper nutrition. When I think back in my time when I wrestled in primary school, I had friends who just starved themselves for days sometimes to make weight. Never seemed intelligent to me. Luckily, I didn't have to do it. But what are some of those misconceptions that you encounter in your work, and how does your approach correct them or help athletes work through them?
I think with combat sports as well, the research is relatively new. So if you wanted to look at nutrition, strength and conditioning, anything, exercise physiology, and with soccer players, with marathon runners, anything endurance, there's tons and tons of research that goes back 20, 30 years. But in the combat sports space, it's relatively new. So all the advice that a lot of fighters have got in the past are from what the coach did, and then his coach did it this way, and then his coach did it this way. So it's kind of the combat sports research is 20, 30 years behind everything else. So a lot of the weight making practices are just hearsay, and someone else did this and someone else did that. And I've worked with fighters that have been in the space for 10, 15 years, and they do things completely wrong. And that's even people who are world champions who've done multiple weight cuts, and it's no fault of their own really. It is just down to the lack of knowledge and research. We're lucky now that the UFCPI bringing out research, and UFC fighters get to go there and train. Even fighters that aren't in the UFC, I've seen go there and train and get the nutrition dialed in. But I think one of the big misconceptions is you have to eat one plain, boring, bland food throughout fight camp. Like everything has to be completely stripped back. You have to sacrifice so much, and the food needs to be just super boring, and also that you need to starve yourself to make the weight, and it's completely the opposite. And it's really touching like the education side of things when you start working with someone. And now I've had fighters where we worked 10, 15 camps, and the fighter that was on camp 1 is just a completely different fighter now. There's that relaxed attitude of making weight. They're not super stressed about making the weight because they know once you've done it multiple times and doing it the right way, there's a system behind it, and they can do it pretty comfortably.
Well, I imagine that each athlete kind of has their own intricacies and things that you have to work through with them. How do you personalize that fight camp nutrition to ensure these athletes are getting both the performance enhancement and having the safe weight cuts?
Well, I think you've got to know the athlete too. Like, there's no cookie cutter approach to combat sports nutrition. Like, what works for one fighter is not going to work for the other, and if you just give a blanket plan to somebody, there's two things that are going to happen. Either they're not going to follow it. That's one of the main things. They're just not going to adhere to the plan, and also they're not going to hit their specific goals. So I think just getting a real understanding of the fighter, and that's the unfortunate thing about combat sports. Is a lot of fighters come to me with a couple of weeks to go and go, I'm like the firefighter. Put a post out the other day about being a firefighter, putting out flames, or like, I'm really heavy, I've got 2 weeks to make the weight. And you can't really do anything, like you can't really work that much with a fighter in that short space of time. So it's having multiple camps, and spend as much time as you can with the fighter, knowing what works for them. Because some fighters, for example, John won't mind me saying this, but like Jonathan Haggerty, he doesn't like eating certain things in the morning, likes to train fasted, whereas someone will, I need my carbs before I train. It's just completely individualized, and you run into problems where I've seen it where people have signed up with me and they said, the nutritionist gave me this plan, they sent me over the plan, and it's like 7 a.m, 9 a.m. It's just a cookie cutter plan. I say, how do you feel from that? I was bored, I hated it, and I struggled to make the weight. And I think it's just, it just all goes back to working with the fighter for as longer period of time as possible. Because you're never going to get things absolutely dialed in with one camp with a fighter. It's working across multiple camps that you get to know them, you know what works for them.
One of the things one of the things I love about your social media is how you go and actually talk about some of the strategy you implement with certain people, like Jack Della or Jonathan, like you mentioned as well. Just talk to me about some of those elite athletes who are in the top tier. When people think Muay Thai or they think MMA, like they're talking about your athletes. How has working with them impacted your business and your growth with conditioned nutrition?
I think I'm not going to lie, in terms of my business scope, working with these people definitely helps the growth of the business. And I remember when I first started off in this space, I actually started working with Jack Della. He was working on, he got his fight on Contender Series, then he won, then he won on his UFC debut, and people see that you're working with someone like that, and then people want to work with you. And I started working with Liam Harrison a couple of years ago, and people see that and go, well, I want to do what he's doing. I want to improve my nutrition. And I think a big misconception as well with elite fighters is people think that they follow this rigid, graph chart. You've got to have this at this time, this, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Like some of the top guys I work with, their nutrition is very flexible because they know that as long as they're hitting the fundamentals, they can go out and maybe have a steak with the girlfriend one night, or maybe have a chocolate bar off the plan because they know they're hitting the fundamentals. I think that's one of the big things I've seen is at the elite level, it's just the flexibility in the programs, whereas someone who's just starting off might not have that nutrition knowledge to do them things. Where someone might message me, I have messages from fighters who just started working with me, lower amateur level, and they're worried about there's no white rice in the supermarket, there's only brown rice, and they're panicking, is that gonna... But someone at that level, at the elite level, knows that that's a tiny insignificant issue, and they just crack on with it. And I think that's probably the big thing you see with the elite athletes is they've been there, done it before, and they've got a lot more, they're a lot more relaxed on the program.
Well, one of the things I'd also seen is you're big into the physiological testing, and obviously that makes sense, particularly as you start pulling people off of these cookie cutter plans. And talk a little bit how that helps within the nutrition strategies and improve that impact for the fighters.
Well, one of the things that happens is someone will come to me and go, "Oh, I need to make weight for the fight. I fight at 70 kilos and I walk around at 80." And the first question I ask is, "Well, why'd you fight at that weight?" "Oh, because my coach told me to." So there's no kind of rationale, like physiological rationale behind it. They could be way too big for the weight class. Their body comp is not suitable for that weight class. So one of the main things I try and stress to fighters is to get a body composition assessment, because you've got this arbitrary weight goal that you want to hit. Can your body actually, can you do that? Not just for one fight, but can you sustain making that weight class over the long term? And I've had conversations with fighters going, "Look, like, we can't work together. You believe your body composition assessment looked like a body fat assessment. You're well too lean for your weight class. Like, we are going to struggle to make that weight. So we could do this now. What about your long-term future?" And sometimes it's a difficult conversation to have with people, because you have that where we go back to the conversation with the coach, where their coach has done the pass down weight making practice. So they hear body composition assessments, "Oh, you two," they're like, "What the fuck's this guy on about?" And I've had them conversations where coaches have been like, "He's making that weight or she's making that weight." Like, that's the way it is. But I look at it as like it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you want to make a career out of this, yeah, you could really struggle to get down to that lower weight class, but can you do that over and over and over again? So yeah, body composition methods of getting that, either through a DEXA scan, that's probably the most accurate way. Skin fold calipers from a trained technician who does skin folds. And there's also like machines that you can get in the gym, like in-body scans. They're not,
The one you
they
hold
all
out.
kind of
Yeah,
range from relative accuracy, where the DEXA is typically the most accurate, and then as you go down the continuum, like, them machines are less accurate, but you get a rough range of where you're at. So I think the body composition assessment is one of the most important things for the fighter, because yeah, it is a marathon, not a sprint, especially if you want to make a career out of this.
Hey everyone, quick favor to ask. Did you know that nearly 80% of the people tuning in right now aren't subscribed yet? That subscribe button down below is what powers me every week to keep putting out these podcasts. Big shout out and thank you to everyone that's been supporting me for this. I couldn't do it without you. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe below. It means the world to me. And for everyone supporting me, thank you so much. Now back to the show. I was just part of a conversation where a UFC legend was talking with a coach about one of his athletes, and the guy who had bumped up, and he was like, "You don't want to make that weight ever again." And he's like, "No, the hell no." But just to think of the torture that person put themselves to through like years and years of making a weight where they were big for that weight class, and yes, they made it, but now they're still competing at the upper echelon. And it's just, from what I get from you, there's a lot of education going on with the athletes, with their coaches. And I saw that you're hosting seminars and having workshops. What's the main message you want to convey to the fighters and the coaches when you're hosting these sessions?
I think, as you said, the education side of things, and showing that there's the easy route and there's the hard route to doing things. And we want to, sometimes it's not black and white, but if we can meet in the middle and go, there's an easier path to go down. And just because I said this, the knowledge in this space is lacking a lot with fighters. Like, luckily, I said about the UFCPI, and they're bringing out research about water load and about hot bath. Like, a lot of stuff is coming out now. I've got a couple of friends in universities in Perth, Western Australia, bringing out stuff about hydration and heat acclimation. So it's growing and growing and growing. Hopefully in the next 10, 15 years, it's not going to be, the coach did it that way 15 years ago. We've got this paper on this, we've got this paper on that, we've got this scientific study on this. And it's an exciting space because it's growing all the time. The amount of organisations that are popping up now, and there's more opportunities for fighters. Because I remember, especially in the UK and Australia, I've lived in Australia for a few years, there was only a couple of MMA organisations, and now there's more that are growing and growing. So there's a lot more fighters coming into the space. Obviously good from a business side of things, but also from there's a lot more fighters to be educated too. Yeah, it's an exciting space at the moment, definitely.
Well, and obviously you can only work one-on-one with so many people, but just putting that information, and I know you have a book out there as well, and just keeping the people on the better side of knowledge seems to be like the key. And that's one of the reasons I love the UFCPI out here in Vegas, and the fact they have them in Mexico now, and obviously China as well, and spreading that and the technology behind it obviously is going to be huge for athletes moving forward. And I hope to see that proliferation. But as you look into the future of what's happening in combat sports, what's your vision for how combat sports nutrition is going to be shaped, and how does condition nutrition plan to stay ahead of these industry trends as you become more educated?
I think it kind of goes to the conversation where people try and bury their heads in the sand about that weight cutting doesn't happen. I think bringing it to the surface and go, it happens a lot. What can we do to improve it? What strategies can we put in place? Could there be more weight classes in certain organisations? Potentially. Is the weigh-in format beneficial to the fighters? Weigh-in times? There's so many things to think about. And I think also as well, when the fighters that are just coming up, like the lower level amateur guys, they're seeing the big names that they're talking about the nutrition. This helped me so much. Now I'm working with so and so. That makes them think, well, I need to hire someone now instead of doing it on my own. And a lot more fighters are going to be focusing on nutrition because they see that. Because you look up to people, don't you? You look up to people in the space. There's people in the Muay Thai space. I see Liam Harrison, that he's working with a nutritionist. He's getting this dialed in. They want to do that. So I think it's only gonna grow. And for me, my job, it doesn't feel like work to me. I love what I do, and I'm always learning. Like, I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I'm always learning. I'm like a sponge. I'm always trying to, what can I do to make that fighter's fight camp even 5-10% better? Just the small margins each time. What can we do to make things that little bit better? And I think once you have that attitude about constant improvement, I think that's when you just continuously grow.
This is anything that speaks to your work. One of my Muay Thai coaches, who was in the corner of one of the athletes at one championship, was commenting that, what was it, like 10 years ago, he fought on a lion fight card where Liam was the headliner, and here Liam is still competing, where he's been coaching for a decade and is, doing it at the highest level. Granted, it was his retirement, and happy for him, but it just really speaks to how important this is for the longevity of people's careers as well, particularly in taking damage where or not they need to be. And I'm always trying to stay up on this type of thing and hopefully expose more people to the importance of not just nutrition, but of proper nutrition and taking that scientific approach. So was really excited to have you on here, and really appreciate you taking the time this morning there in Bangkok. Before we get going, if anyone wants to work with you or wants to learn more about what you're doing at Condition Nutrition, how can they find you, and what's the best way to get in contact?
Probably the best way is just reach out to me on Instagram, condition.nutrition. I'm always active on my Instagram, so yeah, if you ever need anything or need any tips, any help, just drop me a message anytime.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I'll make sure to get you all tagged up and everything, and looking forward to seeing the next round of athletes that are making their way across the world. And thank you again for doing this.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.